Help us keep the Product Porch lights on by giving at patreon.com/theproductporch. Please review the podcast on your favorite platform. Your reviews help new listeners discover us. Thanks.
Get this. Are you ready? 90% of HR leaders don't find annual reviews effective. Isn't that bonkers?
I love the irony of that.
Oh, totally.
Welcome to the Product Porch with Todd Black here, Joe Golly, and me, Ryan Cantwell. Our topic today is how annual performance reviews and product managers don't mix, but will help you make the best of it. Now settle in, folks, because on the Product Porch, every topic is a product topic.
I love that movie.
How many of our episodes have we quoted that movie?
Once every 12 months, I have a thought in my head, and I get more and more frustrated as I think about it. And it's as the lead up comes to the annual performance review. So I
thought you were going to talk about mulching again.
And not mulching this time.
That's episode 2, Todd. That's episode 3. I can't remember what episode that was.
So I would much rather mulch than I would prepare for my annual performance review, because I honestly, over my 20 years of professional experience, have found very little value in the annual performance review. What do you guys think? Do you feel the same way?
First off, 100%. I feel the same way. In fact, I think you all know how strongly I feel about this, since you have received Slack messages about my feelings when we work together. Joe?
No, I just want to know, why are you feeling so apprehensive as the months count down towards annual review time? What is it?
There's a lot of things I think I could cite here, Joe, but let me tell a story. I think this might be the best thing. I remember first starting my career and getting my first job as an associate product manager. I was bright-eyed and saw the world through rose-colored glasses. And I was going into my performance review taking it incredibly seriously. And I still do. I take these things very seriously. To prepare, I had to do a self-evaluation. So I put so much time and energy and thought. And then I go into my meeting with my boss, and it was just like, pat on the head. Okay, I have your, you've assessed yourself well. Here's the scores I give you. And the feedback that I got was, you need to be more assertive in meetings, more assertive. Okay, how do I action against that? And basically it was, be more like me. Don't be like Ryan. Be more like me. Mm-hmm. And ever since then, and then this is where it gets worse, Joe, the next 2 to 3 performance reviews with the same manager, nothing changed. Same advice over and over. It's like, so what am I doing? I'm not getting any feedback throughout the year. I sit down with you in this meeting and you tell me to be more assertive. And I'm doing things I feel like, but yet the annual performance. So what's the point? I started to just give up. What's the point?
So I have 4 reasons why annual performance reviews don't work, and that story touches on 3 of the 4 reasons. That nice. one story. Yeah. So I'm a little bit jaded. You don't like it. Joe doesn't like it. I despise it. To me, if annual performance reviews were a movie, they would be She's the Man. That's the only movie I've ever stopped.
Oh, I don't know. Mine was Batman and Robin. I think that was the worst movie I've ever seen. But okay, so Todd, all right, so 3 out of the 4 Ryan touched on. What was the 4th one?
Let me tell you what the 4 are, and I'll tell you which ones you hit.
What are the 4?
So there's a book I've shared with y'all before. Maybe we could put it in our show notes, called 9 Lies About Work, a free-thinking leader's guide to the real world. In this book, they talk about 9 different myths that we tend to hold about work. And 2 of them define why I think annual performance reviews don't work. So I'm going to share 2 from their list, and then I have 2 of my own. So one of theirs was, people are unreliable raters of other people. Mm-hmm. People are bad at rating other people. Completely applies to Ryan's story. The other one is we place emphasis on weaknesses. And the myth there in the book is that the best performers are well-rounded. And they're not. They're spiky. So we place the emphasis on weaknesses. That applies to Ryan's story. Another one is recency bias. I didn't hear that in Ryan's story. That's a huge reason why they don't work. And the last one is people express the same value in different ways. And the reason I mentioned value is that's very popular today, is kind of a value-based review or performance review where you're evaluating someone based on if they have teamwork or they're accountable or whatever. People express those values in different. So those are the 4. We can go in. I'd love to go into any of them if we want to.
Holy smokes. Recency bias. While I didn't experience that with him, I think I have experienced that one the most throughout my annual performance reviews, to the degree of where I have had one and literally my manager only talks about something that happened last week, that recent. And I get nailed. It's like, wait, you are telling me this one thing that happened one time over the last 12 months is the one thing that we're going to talk about in my annual review?
Yeah, in fact, it's funny about that. So talking about recency bias, I got 2 studies here. One from the Journal of Applied Psychology, and they found that evaluations are influenced usually by the last 6 to 8 weeks. I was actually kind of surprised that it went back that far.
Good. That's actually pretty good.
6 days.
That's actually.
And then a Mercer study found that employees are often judged more on their final quarter's performance than cumulative efforts of the year. And it makes sense if people look. I mean, I think about it this way. If I asked you, how much do you enjoy your job, your current job? Do you like your current job? How much do you enjoy it? What are some things that are going to come to mind to you?
Yeah, like how the last few weeks have gone, right? Like you're going to think about the last few weeks.
Sure.
Have you been doing something interesting? Have you been overworked? Did you have some bad interactions with peers or with your boss over the last few weeks? Did you get a new manager who you don't jive with? You're not going to go back to, how did I feel 12 months ago to see how much I like this job? No one's going to do that because it doesn't matter. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much I like the job 12 months ago. It only matters if I like it now.
Right.
So so thinking about your guys' list, and I want to dive into Todd's 4. My biggest issue with performance reviews, I hate surprises. Despise them.
Oh, yes.
So I have like scratches on my back from getting stabbed because, during a mid-year review because of something that happened months prior and no one told me about it. Like there was all this pent up frustration and no one could just pull me aside and say, hey, did you realize this was happening? They just waited and waited and waited and waited until there was an opportunity till someone said, oh, I'm going to give feedback. Oh, I'm going to really give it good.
And can I ask, was this a boss or was this like peer review?
So my boss on my behalf reached out to my peers. This was many, many years ago. But on my behalf, he did a survey and he asked for feedback. And then we met and we did my mid-year review and he looked shell-shocked. And he didn't know who gave the feedback. Like people were it was a bad culture. Like the culture, like how we were working with our IT partners. It was just, no one was communicating. It was just a bad, like when you have a bad culture and a lack of trust, it's even worse. So for many years, I was terrified of performance reviews, paranoid.
Because hold on, Joe, you're touching on something that's hitting close to home for me. And that's just how anxiety-inducing these things can be legitimately. Because normally these are the things that come out if there's any reason for termination.
Yeah.
There's that.
Yeah.
These are the things that it's like your permanent work record.
Yes.
It's like that
absolutely.
sort of
they
thing.
stay with you. That's right.
Yeah, you talked about that the wrong way to do it being surprised. I think people are often surprised. And I didn't mark that on my list, and I could have added that as its own item. But I think if we were to talk about the right way to do it, you would avoid surprises, right?
Yeah.
You should never be surprised. You shouldn't be surprised at how you're doing. You should always know how you're doing.
So we talked about recency bias, so we can push that one aside. What's your next favorite, Todd?
Well, let's talk about people being unreliable raters of other people.
Okay.
Okay, so this is just a myth. This is a big myth, though. So already we're building a system based on qualitative review.
No.
We think that one person can look at another person and say, this is how well they did. So I'll share a study, again, another study and this is from the book. This study was in the 9 Lies About Work. So it was a Deloitte study, and they were trying to find the ideal way to evaluate people. And so they had put in a lot of a framework together and multiple types of surveys, and they were trying to find out what is the most important factor in performance. And what they found out is that the most important factor in performance is how the rater rates. Because what they learned is there's something called a rating pattern. They call it idiosyncratic tendencies. Some raters are lenient. Some are tougher.
Yep.
Some have a natural range that they kind of spread across the spectrum. Some cluster theirs in tight ways. And that became the biggest impact. So they realized that it was evaluating the rater, not evaluating the performer. And already you're having a problem. So this is another reason why I really despise peer reviews, is because now you're taking this one thing of bad data, and you're adding more bad data. And as any product manager knows, you can't solve bad data by having more bad data. You can't just compound a bunch of bad data and suddenly you have a signal.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. So adding one bad rater to another bad rater and another bad rater's opinion, you're not helped here. How is that made even worse in the context of a product manager performance review?
Think about the breadth and depth of work a product manager does. How could any one person see it all? It's impossible. Even your manager, it's impossible.
But I could counter that though with, if the manager truly understands the role of the product manager, right? They bring people together. They're a motivator. They're a unifier, right? So they could look at the team performance, or look at the relationships on the team, or look at the communication or the lack of communication or the trust, and they could make some inferences about the product manager because the team performance is really driven off of the behavior of the product manager. It's a stretch, but there's something there though.
So Joe, let me give you this scenario.
All right.
If we're doing, say, something like a 360 performance review and I'm getting peer reviews, what if I have just delivered a presentation to the entire sales team and said, sorry, the big project we've been working on is late. It is not coming. I am going to get skewered by the sales team on my performance review. What if that same week I had to go tell the engineering team, sorry guys, I'm the one who had to make the decision. We're not ready. It's not, we're not going to do it for reason X, Y, and Z. They're all frustrated. And at the same time, I've got a marketing team who is got all the stuff ready and they can't launch because I just pulled back. And then it's like, oh my God.
That's exactly what I thought, Ryan. And even not just that, but also just think to what you said before, the small window. Even if they like you, they have this tiny little window into what you do.
Right.
And you think, well, if we combine all these windows, we get the full view.
Yeah.
But that's not true. You just get, you get bad data in all these little pieces. But I want to hit Joe's point directly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to play evil Todd. Okay? I'm evil Todd.
Let the mustache swirling begin.
Yeah. So Joe is my manager, and I just learned what Joe cares about. And I can make Joe very happy if everyone likes me. If everyone likes me. Yes. Everyone likes Todd. Everyone likes Todd. They love working with Todd. Oh, Todd makes me happy. And all Joe hears all the time is, man, Todd's so great. I love working with Todd.
Oh,
I win now. I did it. I am successful.
So I have seen this happen.
I have mastered that, by the way. I have a master's degree in that. But that's
no, I'm thinking this manager, it wasn't relationships they valued. It was numbers. You'd better hit your metrics. And I watched product managers steamroll entire departments to hit their number. So, hey, I'm the golden child. I hit my number. I'll do whatever it takes.
There lies the problem that all of us have dealt with when walking into a new organization or a new team, is that the other parts of the organization don't understand the role of the product manager.
That's right.
All right. So that is a bunch of reasons why product management compounds
unreliable raters of other people.
All right, I got you.
Let's go back one. Let's go back. We did the recency bias, but we didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
How is recency bias made worse in product management?
Think about the ebb and flow of product management work. No, you don't do the same thing every hour, let alone the same day. What? And you're the word failure, Joe. You didn't say it, so I'm gonna go easy on you. You are expected to do things wrong and find dead ends. So what if you have just spent the most recent 6 to 8 weeks? Was it 6 to 8 weeks?
Yeah, 6 to 8 weeks.
The most recent 6 to 8 weeks with chasing. And all of a sudden you find, nope, that's not going to work.
And you know what there? So let's go back to Joe's point from earlier. So maybe your manager believes in you. Maybe your direct manager is like, I know what he's doing. But then he steps into the room with leadership to talk about his team.
They don't understand it.
And their boss goes,
they don't get it.
Are you kidding me? You're giving Ryan a 5? Are you kidding me? We know that he just failed this experiment. He just told us he has to push this project back a quarter. Mm-hmm. You want to give him a 5 and give him a bonus? You're screwed.
Yes.
Because the product manager is sacrificial lamb in many cases. They're the one.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's again, why we love the role and why we hate the role sometimes is we're the one neck to strangle.
One throat to choke.
One neck to choke, right? Yeah. So
you have to have a little bit of a hero complex to be a product manager.
You totally do.
A little bit.
You totally do. You totally do. But the recency bias, again, that's why there's a struggle. That's why there's a struggle with the product manager role in a lot of organizations, because what does success look like? Todd talks about, and I think both of you have talked about celebrating. Hey, I just discovered that this is a bad investment. I just saved us a lot of money. That's got to be ingrained in your culture.
I'll add one more for the recency bias, and you guys will get this right away. Product manager outcomes. How long does it take to see the outcome of a product manager's work?
Well, I could argue with this one, Todd.
Okay, please.
All right, because there are leading, and not to go back to...
Yeah.
There are going to be immediate...
That's true.
And there are lagging indicators.
That's true.
Right? There are behaviors or indicators that things are moving either in the right way or the wrong way. So if framed correctly, depending on when you have your review, those are the things you're going to look at.
And this is why, if you're a product manager in this situation, you got to do an anti-pattern here and sell the leading.
Totally.
It's an anti-pattern, but you got to sell. We delivered this thing we said we're going to deliver, because that's the only way you can measure yourself in a short-term fashion.
Totally. You got to sell the leading.
So, okay, number 2 that I had, this was from that book as well, 9 Lies About Work, places emphasis on weaknesses. This comes from the lie about work, that the best performers are well-rounded. And we talked about this on a past podcast. We talked about the fact that the best performers tend to be spiky. How is this made worse in the product manager context?
So, at risk of giving the same answer twice, the depth and breadth of what product managers do. So, and I'm going to use that real story I told at the beginning as well, where like I said, my boss was trying to make me like him. He wasn't trying to make me. He was trying to make me like him. So I think as a product manager, where we run the risk, because there's so many ways, it's not like we have the generally accepted product management or like generally accepted accounting principles. Like it doesn't exist. So the way we all go about the job can be so different, but yet effective in our own way.
But I mean, but there are standards we should follow, right? I don't know if I would say standards. Are you inquisitive? Are you a good communicator?
Oh,
are you a leader?
Yes.
Like, I mean, there's foundationally expectations one should have about a product manager.
And Joe, let me qualify what I'm saying here. Everybody who has entered a role as a product manager should at least have some level of that.
Correct. Okay.
I know that's not always true. I'm not naive enough to believe that, but ideally, yes. Now, as we look at how a product manager can be made, how product management makes it worse in this particular case, I think it comes back to the fact that you are really doing so many different things. I don't know. I can't get beyond that.
Well, let me add a question. I got a question for you too. So as consultants, we used to evaluate teams, and we would evaluate individuals on that team as well. Do you either of you remember how many competencies were on that list?
15.
15 things. 15 things. Let's say that you are great at a few of those, and there's a couple where you're lagging. And I want to reframe the manager role in this position. By the way, when we talked about Deloitte, one of the things they did is they redefined team leaders as coaches, making their goal to develop their employees.
Interesting.
So let's redefine it. And we're not a manager. I'm now a coach trying to help my team become better. What is the potential risk I run if I'm looking at you, Joe, and that list of 15 competencies, ignoring the 3 to 5 areas where you are the best on my team, and I'm focusing on the 2 areas where you're the weakest? Tell me the risk. What risk am I running?
You mute my strengths. I become average across all the skills, and you lose my spike. You lose the spikes. I become less spiky. And because I'm less spiky, I'm less effective. Our team becomes not as effective because I'm not able to leverage my spikes to the benefit of the product.
And I don't know if either of you are any like me. Well, I do know, actually. I know that both of you are like me this way. So I do know. You can tell me, Todd, we gave you a 10, a 10, a 10, a 10, all the way, and then go, oh, but here you got a 6. I will think about one thing.
Oh, absolutely.
I will think about the 6.
It's human nature.
That's all I'm going to think about.
Well, president of the Type A Overachievers Club, if I don't get 110%, I am losing it.
I was just talking to a VP of product today, who's a friend of mine. We just had a powwow, and every once in a while, we'd do that and share with each other what we're dealing with. He has a product marketing manager who's excellent at research, competitive analysis, all the hard things, all the things we know are the meat, the steak. Great at that. Missing some of the sizzle though. Not great at presentations. Leadership team looks at him and goes, I don't see it with this guy. So now what he's doing, what he could do is say, I'm going to teach you how to present and focus all his effort there. But my buddy's smart. So what he's going to do instead, he has another head to hire a second product marketing manager. Mm-hmm. He's going to look for a product marketing manager who's going to work in a different product suite, but is stronger on that end.
Yep.
And have them help each other and strengthen each other so that across the team is strong.
Yep.
Those are the best managers, the ones that can look across their team and say, how can I complement the skill set than our team. And I think that's the answer to that question, right?
Best performers are well-rounded.
Yes.
The emphasis on weakness.
Right. That's how we counteract it. We focus on the team and less on the weaknesses, so to speak.
Yeah.
The times in my career where I've done my best is when I've been unleashed on my strengths. I had a manager once who recognized my ability for strategy and told me, hey, I want you to just go at this new thing. Help us define a strategy for it. And I was so excited. I had one that recognized my abilities in discovery and said, I want you to show across the team how we can do that. And I got to show the rest of the team, like, hey, here's how I use my discovery techniques. And that's where people get really energized, is when they're doing the thing they're great at and that thing is bringing value.
So going back to the leader, what we should be telling product leaders is part of how you evaluate your product managers is how well they are performing against their spikes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Are you getting the best out of them based on their abilities?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can get behind that.
Because it is quite literally a personal, let me repeat, personal performance review. It is not your review across the entire average of all product managers who ever existed.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so last one, number 4. People express the same value in different ways. So something that's really popular right now, I'm seeing it at multiple companies, is value-based reviews. So the company has some set of values, teamwork, communication, accountability, whatever it is, and we rate against those values. The big problem we have here is this is subjective.
Totally.
This is complete. I'll give you an example. Teamwork. How could you get that wrong? I mean, Joe, you mentioned it earlier. How could you get that wrong? There's only one way to interpret whether or not someone's living the teamwork value, right? Let me give you 2 opposing ways. The first is a collaborator. Likes constant communication, frequent check-ins and interaction, likes to bring other people in the room, is doing that all the time, checking in with people. That's our collaborator. Teamwork, right?
Yeah.
And the next one's the independent contributor. Someone who looks at teamwork as, I own this piece of the puzzle, and I'm going to ensure that I deliver it high quality and on time, consistently. And that's how I'm going to contribute to the team. I'm going to do my job very well all the time. They're both living the value of teamwork. But depending on the rater, the person looking at them, they may say, you know what, you don't live teamwork, Mr. Independent Contributor, because I don't see you doing working sessions with others. I don't see you having those check-in stick, things. Or they could look at the collaborator if they're different and say, I don't, you're weak on our team because it seems like you need everyone to do your work when you're not owning your piece. So depending on the rater, is that value good or bad? Are they good at the value or not?
Yeah. And it leads itself to open for misunderstandings or miscommunication, right? Let's hypothetically say transparency, openness is one of your values, right? And let's say you are a good corporate citizen and you try to go the chain of command.
Mm-hmm.
But then the person at the top is like, well, why isn't Joe coming to me and telling me
he's not being
about what's bothering him?
Exactly.
And so then the reviewer is like, well, Joe isn't following through on the values. Well, wait a minute. The reason why you didn't hear anything is because my leader didn't say anything. They withheld that information. But so now it's perception, right? So now you're dealing with perception as reality. Yep. So those values, I understand why they do it, right? They're trying to build a certain culture.
I agree.
But it lends itself it's so squishy.
And I should state this. We have values at our company. Yep. I'm not against having company values. I think talking about them, and we live our values really well. It starts at the top. We have a great leaders at our company who are good at living their values. And because of that, it rolls down. That I think is important. The part that is icky to me is when we try to judge everyone's performance and put a score on it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Joe, I really like what you were saying because it's so all companies have values. Often they're included as part of the performance review, and you're talking about them. But what frustrates me more than anything is you start at a company, they show you these are our values, and there's like 3 or 4 words behind it. It says like, this is the value, this is what it means. But you never, ever talk about it again with anybody, except in your annual performance review when you're rated on it. Why aren't we spending time aligning and sharing an example of this person demonstrated this value this way? Isn't that great? And this person demonstrated the same value in this different way. Isn't that great?
So thinking about all these, my head goes to roadmaps.
Okay. Say more.
So, all right. One of the challenges we deal with, one of the misconceptions of roadmaps is it's an annual thing. You do it once, stick it in the drawer, and it collects dust. Right. Yes. And then 9 months later, somebody from sales, somebody from operations is like, well, Joe, you told me back in October that we were going to launch the XYZ. Why didn't we do it? Failure. Right.
Yeah.
And what's the trend that all three of us are trying to go towards in our own companies is, it's dynamic.
Yes.
There's some level of cadence. They should be updated all the time. And we've talked about, I'm a big quarterly planning person, right? Roadmap should be updated on a quarterly basis. I almost think that performance reviews, they should go away. The word annual should be stricken from the record. And it should be a quarterly review. And let's review what we did in that quarter. What are we thinking about? We're thinking about what's happened recently, right? It gives us time to adjust.
You mentioned the antidote here. I do want to call out though how values, I think, impact product management specifically. Fair. You keep talking about how you work cross-functionally with so many departments.
Yep.
Every department has its own culture. Teams have their own cultures. And I think it's really unlikely that you're going to express these values the same way for every team in the way they interpret it. I think of it as like the lunch tables in a high school.
Right.
You got the sales team here, you got the engineering team there, you got the marketing team there, you got the finance team there. They all look different, they act different, they speak different. And you as a product manager is working with all of them.
Right.
And what engineering loves about you may not be what sales loves about you. Fair. And engineering will say, "Oh, Todd is such a good team worker," and sales goes, "Todd doesn't work with teams at all. Completely ignores us because the way they see teamwork is different." Anyway, I do want to get back to your question though, Joe.
No, so going back to the antidote. Sorry, I jumped ahead.
Yeah, no problem. So I was going to say the antidote here. Here's the antidote that I see is, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I agree. Annual performance reviews, bye-bye. Go away. Mm-hmm. We don't have them at our company. It's fantastic. We don't need them. And the reason is we just said all the reason doesn't work. So what do? We do the opposite. Okay. So we're not good at rating people. Let's stop rating people. I know that sounds crazy. We don't have to give numbers. Let's do check-ins more frequently. If we're checking in and making sure that we're on top of what our expectations are with our manager, we should be fine. Oh, of values. I got to mention this about values. The antidote there, focus on behaviors. I had a manager teach me this one time and I loved it. He said, never assume what people are thinking. Don't try to assume how they're feeling. You don't know. Focus on the behavior. So I can ask, hey, Joe, I noticed you did this thing. I noticed that in the meeting, there was a question from engineering and you didn't answer that question. And you seem to move on without answering it. Tell me, Joe, is there a reason why? Is there something I missed there? And you talk about it. I'm focusing on the behavior. And I'll let you guys, I don't want to take all of them. I'd love to hear what are some better ways to do it from you too.
So the number one on my list is just that. Real-time feedback is the best way to do it. Keep it, make it continuous, do it often. I would always ask my managers for So as I was doing annual performance reviews, I shouldn't say my companies were requiring annual performance reviews. I was asking my manager, as I started to learn, the review doesn't matter. What does matter is I'm finding out, saying, okay, next time you see me do this thing, will you tell me and tell me where I could improve or do better? And that was kind of my little tiny hack.
Okay, so we've talked a lot of really good ideas. At the end of the day, though, why do companies need performance reviews? To judge whether or not you're qualified to be promoted. It's going to depend on your compensation or your bonus.
Yep.
So we're talking about a lot of really good things here. I don't disagree with any of them, but you still need some system, right?
Get ready, buckle in, fellas. We all see the performance review system is driven by the HR department, that department down the hall. Yeah. But get this. Are you ready? 90% of HR leaders don't find annual reviews effective.
I love that stat.
Isn't that
I love
bonkers?
The irony of that. And that's such a big part of their job.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gets even better. Listen to this. Just managers in general. 95 statistical significance of managers are dissatisfied with their organization's review system.
95%?
95. Yeah.
Wow. So wait, I want to answer this question, Joe. I want to answer this question.
Yeah.
Okay. So we see it's flawed. We just called out the many reasons it's flawed. But we have a problem. As a business, we still need to know who we should give more money to, who we should promote, right?
Yes.
Yep.
So let me give you another way of doing this. And then after I do that, since most of us may never have the opportunity to define the model our company uses, I want to talk about how people can be successful in that garbage model that we just lambasted.
Yes, let's deal with reality.
But before we do, let's come here and say, what can we do? Here's what we could do for leaders. It starts by, again, what Deloitte did, changing the description of what a team manager is and what their role is to be a team coach and evaluator. It means we need to up level. You both have had the experience. You assume the person in the room talking to you didn't prepare much for the conversation. I've had that too. That has to go away. No more of these annual reviews where they may or may not have time to prepare for them, where they're thinking about the last 6 weeks. The way you make a determination of, is this an A player? And actually, it puts more emphasis on judging performance because you're doing it all the time. You're coaching in the moment. You're evaluating it in the moment. And if you see someone consistently, you've been working with them and they can't get it and they're not bringing the value. And it's not someone who's just has a low competency area, but they're just not bringing value to your team. And you're trying to coach them and they're not working. Then that's where we have different conversations with HR. We bring them in and we have these conversations. We need this. We're not seeing it. You can have real conversations about that. And so the idea is that you are constantly trying to help your team be successful. You're looking for those opportunities to coach. And if they're not coming along, then they're not right for the role or they're not right for the position. One thing we didn't talk about in depth here, I think we mentioned it one sec, like a little bit, but we didn't talk about it in depth, is metrics. This is where making sure you have the right metrics and the right priorities are important, and you're very transparent about it. We talk about metrics here and priorities on a daily basis, every day. Well, it's really hard for you to not understand, Joe, where you stand with me, or Ryan, where you stand with me, if I'm talking to you about your priorities and metrics every day. Like that's a big part of it. Is we need to be very clear, transparent, and keep that in focus at all times.
Yeah. One fact I don't want to lose sight of through this conversation is personal, I don't like the word, but I'm going to use it, ambition, or career path might be a better term. Not everybody wants to be a manager. Some people want to do different things, but it's the marriage of that personal goal, me as the individual, with my performance. Am I making progress there? And not, it's not the path the company wants for me. No, it's mine. And I think some leaders are not recognizing that. How can I make them valuable to the business in that role, but also how do we help them achieve the personal goals that they want to achieve?
Can we talk about how to be successful in the crap model?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's make a crap sandwich.
Ryan already took one. Create those opportunities with your manager, right? Go have those conversations, kind of force them to talk about goals and metrics and align on them. So I'm going to count that as one that's already been taken by Ryan. I'll grab another one. And Ryan alluded to this. Track your progress throughout the year. If you're in an annual performance review model, track it in a performance log, because your manager might have forgotten. But if you can do the self-review and put in there all those things, then it sparks his memory. So a performance log, a wins document, whatever you want to call, track it throughout the year.
Yep. Yeah. And I want to double down on that a little bit and say, don't be too humble. Don't be overly confident in your abilities. Instead, be realistic and state the facts. And if you have those facts to fall back on, you're going to be better for it.
All right. So mine goes back to what I was kind of alluding to, which is force there to be regular check-ins. Don't wait mid-year. Don't wait till the end of the year. Every 2 or 3 one-on-ones, like, hey, let's just, how are things going? We talked about this. Are you seeing progress? Like, have a running record.
I like that one. Identify those key competencies early. So we talked about the competency model. We're rating on these 15 things or these 10 things or these 5 things, whatever they are. Know what they are. Don't let yourself be surprised. Know what they are. Get your manager to express those things. And then have a story for everyone. All right, Ryan, do you have any others?
This is the simplest one, I think. And it's just simply, one, before your performance review, you know it's coming. Comes once a year. It's like Christmas. Yes. Ask your boss what their expectations are for the upcoming performance review. What do they expect and hope to see? Then tell them what your expectations are for the year.
That.
I always took the person that took that initiative, like you said, Ryan, a lot more seriously. Like I always were like, okay, I don't want to disappoint Ryan. I'm going to make sure that I give that individual the proper attention versus the person who really didn't demonstrate the care.
It reminds me of that scene from The Office when Angela is getting her performance review. Michael Scott's busy worried about some Michael Scott related thing. And she has a talking head where she's like, I love being judged. And it's this whole thing about how she loves it. And she walks in the room, and before she can sit down or anything, Michael's turning around and, your performance was adequate. And that's it. That's her entire review.
Yes.
Okay. I have one last one. I know this is an anti-pattern, and you all, both of you, might slap me for saying this. If I said this on a real team, you might slap me. Y'all, it's 6 to 8 weeks. That's what they remember.
Yeah.
Crush the fourth quarter. Crush it.
Oh yeah.
Set that bar at a very reasonable place. Hit it. Don't, save that really uncomfortable conversation till January. Like, it sounds horrible. It sounds awful.
Manipulate it.
But if this is the game we're going to play, if your bonus, if your future at the company is going to depend on this meeting, make sure that's a nice, smooth, easy, happy last 8 weeks of the year.
Yeah. So I have one quick one too. And that's just simply shift the focus from past performance to future growth. So yes, you're going to have to talk about past performance, but make sure you include as part of that conversation, looking ahead. How can I do better? Tell me, give me the example. Tell me, what are we going to look for? How do we make that tangible? Because otherwise, it's just you leave with question marks. And it's like, well, I guess I'll have to wait for the next one and see if I got any better. And it shouldn't be like that. So make it better. Focus on the future.
All right. So I'll end with, and I did this a few jobs ago, because I was I really focus on the relationships across the organization. I went out and I seek the feedback on my own.
Smart.
I went out and I seek the feedback so that I can fix it versus waiting and hearing about it in 6 months.
All right, I'm going to share my takeaway because I have a takeaway here and I need to share it.
Okay.
Can you remember something? Just please, everyone, remember something. We are not reliable raters of other people. This is a principle we should take into our personal lives as well. We are not good at this. Stop fooling yourself. I hear so many people, I'm a good judge of character. I can tell in the first phone call. Stop it. Don't do it. Don't think it. If you're going to evaluate someone, look at the behavior, be inquisitive and ask about their behavior. And that's the best chance you got.
I would say take some ownership or as much ownership as you can over that process as possible.
Love it.
Really try to hold on to it and do your best to influence it to the most that you can.
And mine is be your biggest cheerleader. Be your biggest cheerleader.
100%. Man, this is awesome. This one's going to be really hard to cut down. This is long. We could have done a 2-hour pod.
We could have.
Long.
We could have.
Yeah. Anyway, but this was super fun. I really enjoyed it.
See ya.
See you around. Thank you for joining us on the Product Porch. We release new episodes every 2 weeks. You can also find us on LinkedIn for more content. We offer a special thank you to AJ and Jack Block here for the music. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts of this podcast are their own and do not represent nor necessarily reflect those of their employer.